Welcome into One of One Sports, the only one for your original sports commentary and analysis. It's another Tuesday, so it's time for our updated Week 4 Top 25 and, of course, our Week 4 college football predictions. Let's get into it. All right, so we have another excellent slate of games, but first, let's recap how we did last week as we improved to 13-8 on the season after a 4-2 week. We had a couple like Miami over South Florida, LSU over Florida, weren't the boldest of takes, so expect to get those right. And then Vanderbilt, South Carolina, we missed on that one, just a bad pick on my part, way off. But on the flip side, we called the Georgia Tech upset over Clemson, so that's a good pick. And then the two big games, we split 1-1. Had a little luck as Tennessee missed the field goal, allowing us to get the Georgia game right. Then the other game, unlucky, Notre Dame missed the extra point, which, causes them to lose the game. So overall, 4-2 week, 13-8 in the season. We're still looking for our first perfect week, and we have 5 really big games this weekend. Texas Tech at Utah, Michigan at Nebraska, Auburn at Oklahoma, Illinois at Indiana, and Florida at Miami. I think we can do it. I think we can go 5-0. Let's get started. All right, so the first game is going to be in that noon window, but this is at Utah. So this is a local 10 a.m. kickoff. So I would expect the players to be a little bit sluggish out of the gate. Definitely wouldn't expect like a high scoring first quarter. I think we'll see some points later on, but I think we'll have to build up to it. The first thing I want to talk about, though, is just what do we know about these teams? And my answer would be not much. I mean, Texas Tech has played pretty much nobody. Sure, they crushed Oregon State 45-14, and they've crushed all the inferior competition like they're supposed to. I think they're a really good team based off all the investment they've had in NIL, how good Baron Morton looks, throwing for a ton of yards. The roster overall talent looks to be really solid, but there's no proof it's Oregon State, not good competition. And it's a similar thing with Utah. Like I thought the UCLA went on the road like against a power Big Ten opponent. I was giving them a ton of credit for them, beating them like, what was it, 43-10? But now we know UCLA's terrible. UNLV beat them. New Mexico crushed them. And now their coach is fired. So that's pretty much nothing. And then even last week, you struggled a little bit against Wyoming. And I was on the road in a look-ahead spot to maybe, the most important game of your season, as I think these two teams, at least for me right now, look like the two best teams in the Big 12. Like I said, we don't know for sure. They haven't played high-level competition. But at least eye test-wise, I think they look like the best teams in the Big 12. So I'm willing to give you the benefit of the doubt for that, but it doesn't change the fact that we don't really know much about either of these teams. One thing I think I do know is that Utah has a really strong O-line led by Spencer Fano, projected NFL first-round pick, and Texas Tech is uniquely equipped amongst Big 12 teams to have a defensive line to stand up for that. At least I think so. With what he brought in the transfer portal, mainly, like, you spent a lot on the edge, Romello Height, David Bailey, but you also fortified that interior, and you should have the most talented defensive line in the Big 12 to match up with Utah, which should have the most talented offensive line in the Big 12. So that battle in the trenches, is Utah going to win that like they did? Well, I mean, they've won it everyone they played so far, but of course they haven't played a defensive line like Texas Tech. Whoever can win that kind of push on the interior is going to have a huge edge in this game. And then finally, I got to talk about Devon Dampier because I mentioned those edges for Romello Height, David Bailey coming off the edge. One, they're dealing with much better tackle play than they've had to, so far this season. But the other thing is, it is not easy to bring down Devon Dampier. I feel like I mention this every time I talk about Utah. But I went to semifinal playoff game, Arizona high school semifinals, Hamilton High School versus Saguaro, rooting for Hamilton. Obviously, that's my school, and it was my school. But anyways, we lose, and a big part of that was because no one on our team could bring down Devon Dampier, and he's looked like that still in college football. He's an excellent runner. He's doing it with his arm. I think he's a dark horse Heisman contender, and I think he's going to be the difference in this game. I think Baron Morton's a really good player. He can sling the rock around the yard, but Devon Dampier, what he can do with his legs, what he can do creating things, it's just enough of a difference for two teams that, for me, are so close together. I'm not confident either way. I don't know that either has proved enough to feel confident either way. But Utah, you got them at home, and I think they have the better quarterback who can be just dynamic enough, make just enough big plays to, in this spot, get them a huge win. It's a change from in the preseason. I picked Texas Tech because I thought, okay, they have the D-line to stop Utah's run game. They're going to force Dampier to beat them through the air. I don't know he can do that. But so far this season, now again, weaker competition, but he's still played competition. I think Dampier has shown major improvements as a passer to where I feel confident he can beat a team through the air. opening up the plays for him to run around, and then I know he'll beat you on the ground. And I think he's going to be enough for Utah to just narrowly beat out Texas Tech. I'm thinking like 27-24 Utes. All right, next game we're going to predict is a Big Ten clash between two blue blood programs. We got the Michigan Wolverines traveling to Nebraska to take on the Cornhuskers. Getting straight into the keys to the game, actually, first let's mention Michigan coach Sharon Moore is suspended for this game, so he's not going to be there. He wasn't able to coach for practices during the week. I don't think Michigan will be too affected by that because you look at it, both coordinators have been around for a long time. We know Wink Martindale's been in the NFL. Chips Lindsey, I think, has been a head coach before. So the coordinators are going to be prepared. And Michigan's dealt with this very recently with Jim Harbaugh. So I think they're prepared for a situation like this, but it's still worth mentioning. Now getting into the keys to the game. And I think the biggest one that's going to play into this is Underwood improving. And this is in two facets. One, I think we've already seen. One, we haven't seen yet. So what we already saw was last week, Central Michigan, 63-3 win. Bryce Underwood became the first Michigan quarterback to have over 100 yards rushing since Devin Gardner many, many moons ago. So it had been a while for Michigan. And that was mostly, like there was a little bit of scrambling, but we saw how dynamic he can be with design runs. Now, albeit it's Central Michigan. But we didn't even see Michigan really try this against Oklahoma. And I think the lanes are there. I know the athleticism for Bryce Underwood's there. And now that Michigan is building us into the offense because, there have been offensive struggles so far this season when they played Oklahoma, having Bryce Underwood as a run threat will open things up for the run game. We know Justin Haynes is a home run hitter. Having both those threats will open things up in the passing game, which Michigan needs help with. So guys like Klein and McNolly will have easier coverages, and Underwood will hit them that way. And this offense will just add another layer, which it needs to become, sort of the playoff caliber team I thought Michigan could be. And I think we're already seeing that come to fruition. I expect Bryce Underwood to continue to run the ball really effectively. And I think in this game, we'll see design quarterback runs. I think it'll make an impact in this game. The second thing we haven't seen yet, and it goes for Underwood, but also really all of Michigan offense, is what I think people aren't talking enough about in the Oklahoma losses. Sure, Michigan's offense struggled, but you have to take into account it was a true freshman quarterback on the road for the first time in his career in a night game in Norman, Oklahoma against a Brent Venables defense, one of the best defensive minds in the entire sport of college football. They were supposed to struggle. But now I think we'll see the improvements from them. I think that Bryce Underwood's going to be a quick learner. And now, second road game in an environment that, it'll be an earlier day game, but Nebraska, that place is going to be sold out. It's going to be loud. They're going to be cheering for their team, much like Oklahoma. So another hostile road environment against a pretty good defense. But now, this isn't Brent Venables. It's not a night game. And Bryce Underwood now has the road experience. So I think we're going to see how much this team has already improved from week 2 to week 4 in terms of dealing with this type of environment. I think we see a much better performance from the Wolverines offensively. Then I want to talk about a Dylan Raiola story because this is a huge spot for Nebraska. And it feels like they've been here before. Just last year, Illinois came in, a ranked matchup. Nebraska loses in overtime, and then their season kind of falls off. But that was that was not the pinnacle. That was kind of the turning point, right? It was if Nebraska wins this matchup, you moved. It was like 4-0, 5-0, and now you're looking ahead. What could they do? They lose that game. Things go south pretty quickly. You end up having a big losing streak. But Nebraska's been in these spots. Or I say this to say Nebraska's been in these spots over the past few years. They've had moments where it's like, you can win this game. And this feels a lot like that, right? Can you beat Michigan, the Wolverines, in your building? And I just want to talk because this isn't like some, high-level analysis, but Dylan Raiola played a game against Hamilton High School when he was at Chandler High School. I was at that game watching. Hamilton, we had our backup quarterback in, Beckham Pellant, Illinois State. He actually played against Oklahoma recently. But Chandler struggled to move the ball, and this is the biggest rivalry in Arizona, right? It's a huge game, high school football standards in our state. And we beat them 19-17 with a backup quarterback. Dylan Raiola struggled to move the ball. Offense didn't look good, right? And this was in the biggest spot. And then again in the playoffs, Chandler let down or disappointed, and Dylan Raiola didn't have the biggest game. And then his freshman year, there were some spots in the lights were the brightest, and he didn't look the best. And I just talked about, you're not necessarily who you always are, right? I just talked about Underwood improving. Of course, people can improve, but first impressions matter. I look at recent Michigan quarterback J.J. McCarthy. First game he ever played at Michigan, Western Michigan, he was the backup. He came in relief, and he rolled right, and he hit this throw all the way across the field to the left, deep throw, 60-something yard touchdown against Western Michigan. And I remember the call because I said the same thing, and then they said it on the broadcast. But it's Kincaid McNamara do that because it was right away you knew this dude was special. And then I look at it again in his debut Monday Night Football against his team he grew up rooting for. So standalone game, first ever start in the NFL, and he's off to a brutal start. And then he has that fourth quarter, 3 touchdowns, really historic debut. And that stuff matters, right? I feel like in a first impression, you can learn a lot about somebody. You learned a lot about Arch Manning in that Ohio State game. We learned a lot about J.J. McCarthy. We've learned a lot about people through their first impressions. And Dylan Raiola is someone who's never given me the impression that he's going to raise to another level in this moment. I'm not saying he's going to shrink, but I don't see, for all the talent, I've never seen him step up to the plate to where I think, Dylan Raiola is going to play an elite game to beat Michigan. And then finally, I got to talk about the Michigan physicality because when they've added the extra blocker, they've been really effective to the run game, and that's how Justin Haynes has hit some of these super long touchdowns. But the D-line didn't look incredible against Oklahoma, but I don't think Nebraska is going to be as good as Oklahoma was in the trenches, but there's the possibility that Michigan really isn't as good as I think they are, or they're supposed to be, or a lot of people. So the Michigan physicality is a question mark here. But I probably think you can tell from the breakdown, I think Michigan's a team that's getting better. I think Nebraska's not quite ready for this spot. I think Michigan has the better quarterback. I think the element of the quarterback run game is going to help, and I think they're going to improve their physicality from week 2. I think this is a Michigan team trending in the right direction. I think it's a close game. Don't get me wrong. I think something like 24-17 Michigan, 24-20 maybe, but I am going with the Wolverines to win this one on the road. All right, taking a break from the predictions, it is time to unveil the new Week 4 1-of-1 Top 25 poll, and let's give it to you 25 through 21. So 25 came down to 3 teams. It was Texas, Alabama, and it was Notre Dame. Texas, maybe you think I'm being a bit harsh, but there's not a lot on this resume. It's 2 lackluster wins against bad teams. Arch Manning's looked terrible, the offense looked bad, and a loss against Ohio State's only going to go so far. Alabama, that Florida State loss still lingers in my mind. I don't care really what you did against ULM. And Wisconsin was impressive, but Wisconsin's a bad team on a backup quarterback. So I still need to see more before I can forget the Florida State loss. Do I think Alabama's a top 25 team? Yes, but do I think they've earned it yet? Not quite. You may be saying, what has Notre Dame done? And yeah, I get it. There's no wins on the resume at all, an 0-2 football team. But it's 2 losses by a combined 4 points for 2 teams that I do think are going to be quite high, or I know, spoiler alert, are going to be quite high in my ranking. USC then, 24. Weird game against Purdue, rain delay. Didn't look as good as they looked in previous weeks necessarily, but still really solid. Mississippi State beat Alcorn State soundly. Do I think they're a top 25 team? Still not really, but the ASU win is a really good win, and I give them credit for it. USF crushed by Miami. At first, I thought about dropping them out, but I thought the Boise State and the Florida wins are still an impressive enough resume that I think they deserve to be in the lower tier here. And then Missouri, Bo Prabula still looks good. Team looks good. They come in at 21. Then 20 through 16, Washington, Texas Tech. I mean, we just talked about Texas Tech, but the same thing for Washington. 2 teams I really believe in. Haven't necessarily proven yet, but I really like Washington's quarterback, running back, wide receiver trio of Williams, Coleman, Boston. Texas Tech, we just talked about. I like Morton. I like all the talent, but we need to see it. Some more impressive wins on the resume. They have a big opportunity against Utah this week. TCU, similar thing. The UNC thing, not as impressive anymore, but I still like Hoover and those receivers. I think they're a really good team that'll be a player in the Big 12. Then a third straight Big 12 team, Iowa State, who took a pretty significant drop for me. I can't remember. It was either 10 or 11 last week, but they had played a game that was way too close for my liking against Arkansas State, especially considering what Arkansas did to Arkansas State. And the resume continues to look worse, as I've been giving them a lot of credit for a Kansas State win that we now know is not very impressive. Everyone seems to beat Kansas State except North Dakota. Even then, that required a game-winning drive from Avery Johnson. And then the Iowa win. Don't really know if that's that impressive either with how bad Iowa's offense is. Then Illinois, a team that the Duke win, I thought was really impressive because I thought Duke was really good. Turns out I was wrong. So Illinois, another one of these teams that we just don't know yet, right? We just don't know. And then 15 through 11, Ole Miss, I give them a lot of credit. Big jump here because you were able to beat Arkansas in a shootout with a backup quarterback. Defensive question marks, sure, but at least they stepped up when they needed them to. Tennessee, I was still really impressed in a loss against Georgia because of the offense. looks so good, and Heupel finally had a good offensive performance against Kirby Smart. The receivers are better than I thought. The defense had some issues, but you're getting two-star cornerbacks coming back, so that's something you have to factor in as well. I expect Tennessee to be a major player the rest of the season. Auburn looked good again. I mean, you have the Baylor win, which is still there. Georgia Tech, you now have Clemson win, Colorado win, are either the most impressive, maybe not, but I still think beating Clemson in the fashion they did, Haynes King looks great, is enough for me to put them pretty high. And then Utah comes in at 11, dropping out of my top 10, but we just talked about them. They're in a similar boat where I've given them a bunch of credit, and eye test-wise, I believe in them. I like their quarterback a ton, but another one of these teams that we don't really know, I just have liked the eye test a little more and believe in them a little more than some of the other ones we just talked about. But they're another team that if you want to lower because they haven't proven it yet, I would understand that, and they come in just outside the top 10 for me. All right, continuing with predictions, we have Auburn taking on Oklahoma in what some people are calling the Jackson Arnold revenge game. Let's break it down, and hopefully, it's my third time shooting this segment. Once, recording crashed. Second time, school fire drill, so hopefully we get through it this time. You got to talk about the Auburn passing game, because for all the weapons Auburn has, and elite wide receivers in Cam Coleman, Eric Singleton, they have not been prolific passing the ball, and this Oklahoma defense has proven against Michigan, and we know Brent Venables can do, that if you can't beat them through the air and they're allowed to commit to stopping the run, they will stop the run and you will not score. That's just what's going to happen. Auburn has to be able to make plays through the air. But what also is important is the QB run plays, because while Auburn hasn't been prolific through the air, Jackson Arnold, especially in the Baylor game, but actually really all the games, has made a bunch of plays with his legs. He's been great running. And John Mateer, we saw in the Michigan game, felt like critical moment after critical moment. They needed a few yards on a QB draw. He was going to get it. Both quarterbacks are going to look to make plays with their legs. If either does it better than the other, or if either's not able to do it, that could completely swing what we're seeing here. And then finally, it is the Jackson Arnold X Factor, because this is not just another game. This is going to be an emotional moment for him. This is a team that had all the belief in him, enough to send future Heisman finalist Dylan Gabriel away and say, you're the guy. And then it did not work out at all. You were benched. You came back. Brent Venables kind of ripped you in press conferences at times. It was a really rough experience. He's going to want to show, look how much better I am now. And that could lead to things. We could see this inspired, heroic Jackson Arnold performance where he just plays the best ball of his life, wanting to prove Oklahoma wrong. Or you could see him be a little nervous, a little tense, make some mistakes against a defense that is really good. Now, in the preseason, I picked Auburn to win this game, and I talked about I think Jackson Arnold's going to take a major jump this year. I think he's going to play inspired in this performance. But now the pendulum's kind of swung the other way for me, where I've seen how good this Oklahoma defense is. I knew it'd be good with Brent Venables, but it's even better than I thought, maybe the best in the country. It's certainly competing for that. The defensive line is fearsome. The secondary looks really good as well, and I don't trust Auburn to make plays through the air. I'm expecting like a really low-scoring game here because Auburn, I think, also has a really good defensive front. And Oklahoma hasn't consistently shown me they can run the ball well outside of Mateer. I don't know if Blaylock's the guy. Who knows what's going on with Jaden Ott. So I'm not sure either team's going to be super explosive offensively, but I do think at home with a better defense, Auburn is a good defense too, but Oklahoma is the better defense. And when I trust your quarterback more than I trust Jackson Arnold, I still think Arnold has those mistakes in him. I do think he could play a little tense, try to do too much at times. And overall, I think it's just a defensive battle that Oklahoma is better at playing that style of football. This is the game they want to play. It's going to be played on their terms, and their quarterback is going to deliver when he needs it. Going Oklahoma, something like 24-16, something like that. Low-scoring game where it's always within the margin of error, but Oklahoma is just so sound defensively and so consistent offensively of what their quarterback veteran experience can do, and they're going to get the win at home. Now, a showdown in the Big Ten between two, to me, shockingly similar teams in Illinois, Indiana, narratively and performance-wise, and in terms of what we know about them. So last year, these were the two, Cinderella darlings of the Big Ten. Indiana making the playoff. Illinois didn't quite go that far, but still beat South Carolina in that pretty big bowl game. And both teams were like, oh, no one respected us in the preseason. No one thought we'd do anything. And now we did all these great things. We're back with a bunch of returning production. Now we have expectations, right? They're similar in that regard. But then also you look at statistically, like Luke Altmaier and Fernando Mendoza are within like a yard of each other passing wise, within a touchdown, within like 2 or 3 like completion percentage. They're like the same guy so far this year. The leading receivers are within 10 yards. Their leading runners are within like 10 yards or like 5 yards. It's like their team is just profiled exactly the same. And then in terms of what we know about them, we think they're pretty good. We think that you returned a lot. You were good last year. You should be good again. But we don't know, right? Because Illinois, that Duke win, what does that mean now? Is Duke just not good at all? And it was a 5 turnover game, also kind of weird. And then Indiana, your best win's Old Dominion, which, for all we know is about the same quality as the Duke win with what Old Dominion did to Virginia Tech. But so there's no proof of either of these teams. It's a lot like the Utah-Texas Tech game, where it's a big game, and we think both teams are good, but we don't know for sure. And that leads to a lot of variance, makes it hard to predict, because maybe one of these teams is pretending, maybe one of these teams is a true contender. There's a lot of different things we could find out from this game, or they could play a really close one-possession game, and we come away from it still not knowing much about either team. And that's why I want to talk about the turnover battle, because these teams are so similar, you're looking for just the tiniest edge. And like Illinois, you're looking at a guy like Gabe Jacobs in the pass rush, right? Can he get to the quarterback, strip Mendoza, something like that? Indiana, can you protect the ball? Because Duke showed, and Duke hasn't been great this year, but they moved the ball effectively against Illinois defense, but there were the turnovers that killed him. Over his career, Mendoza's been pretty good securing or taking care of the ball. 6 interceptions last year, hasn't thrown one yet this year. If he does protect the ball, I expect Indiana, with their receivers in Surratt and Cooper, with a solid run game, to be able to move the ball fairly well. I think Illinois, with Hank Beatty, he's been really good this year. I expect another pretty good game from him. I think they'll be able to keep up, but when their defense is going to be allowing Indiana to move the ball as I expect, it's going to be harder to make play after play on Luke Altmaier. I think that could lead him to press a little bit, something he hasn't had to do yet this year, as they've been mostly in front or the defense has been taking care of it. So I think he could be the one to make a mistake, not Mendoza. I think that could be all the difference. I'm just barely going Indiana like 30-27. Like, I think there'll be points scored. I think both teams are really similar, but home field, just enough of an edge. It's really, truly a pick 'em, and I'm only picking it because it's one of the biggest games of the week. I don't have a strong feel. This is the one of the week I am least confident in, but I will tepidly go with Indiana to get the win. Final game we're predicting, and that is Florida at Miami. This is the site of College Game Day. And look, I got to talk about this from a perspective, how could Florida win? Because for me, it's pretty obvious Miami is favored. What we've seen from the Canes versus what we've seen from the Gators, worlds apart, right? But this is College Game Day. It is a big game. It is big brand, so it still will be broken down. But we got to talk about Florida's morale and Lagway's confidence, which also may be broken down. 5 interceptions, just throwing the game away, right? You should have beaten LSU, but you just couldn't help yourself. Napier couldn't help but call passing play after passing play with a quarterback who couldn't seem to read anything the defense was doing, throwing horrible pick after horrible pick after horrible pick. Absolutely terrible. And now the morale, right? The defense is like, we're playing great. The offense can't do anything. And now do you have confidence in your quarterback? Probably not. And look, like Ruben Bain's going to be getting back there. Miami's D-line is going to be getting back there. The corners, the safeties, it's all improved. Their defense is really good. And do I think Lagway's going to make mistakes? Yes. And do I think there's a chance DJ Lagway on Saturday is benched in this game? Yeah, I think there's a pretty good chance, which is absolutely crazy to say given all the hype he had. But I think, 1 in 3 chance he exits this game no longer being the starting quarterback definitively for Florida, which is insane to say. And yeah, I just talked about the Miami defensive front, but Ruben Bain's we already know is great. Mesidor is great. David Blay, if they stop the Florida run game, force Lagway to throw, they'll win this game for sure. I mean, because he'll hand it to you most likely. But if you don't stop the run game, then Florida can get you into this defensive battle where it's low scoring and lean on Baugh, and he's doing just enough, and we get this like 17-14 Florida win, kind of like the LSU game, just minus the turnovers, where you can't score and it just grits out, like the South Florida game, right? We just get one of these low-scoring games where Florida's defense, the Florida-South Florida game, by the way, where they just play really good defense, limit the offense, and if Lagway doesn't make mistakes, they pull the upset. But I don't see it happening. Miami's defensive front is too good. Their offense is too good. They're better than both South Florida and LSU clearly on offense. The receivers are playing great. They run the ball great. The offensive line is a different tier than either of those teams. Miami's going to put up at least like 24 points. I'm almost sure of it. Can Florida get to 24 just running the ball? No, which means you'll put the game in Lagway's hands. Don't trust that at all. Got to go the Canes pretty obviously. It's a pretty simple pick for me. I'll go like 31-17 Miami. So that is the last game breakdown and prediction, but we're not done yet. We have to reveal now. It is time for the 1 of 1 top 10. Coming in at number 10, The Vanderbilt Commodores, pretty surprising to see. Would not have seen this coming into the preseason. But the way you beat South Carolina, and I know Lenore Sellers missed most of that game, but 31-7, ending a 16-game losing streak against the Gamecocks in Williams-Brice at night was ultra impressive to me. Combine that with how they looked in the second half of the Virginia Tech game, I think they have earned this spot in the top 10. Now, I will say, for me, there's a clear top 9 in my rankings. And then when I got to 10, it was like there's a lot of teams that could have this spot. I gave it to Vanderbilt, but now at 9 is where there is some separation. And I'm going with the Texas A&M Aggies. Now, I didn't even rank them last week. I had them in honorable mentions because I wasn't super impressed with the Utah State and UTSA performances. And I questioned Marcel Reed. That was another big question mark. Now, you've played a team I think is really good in Notre Dame in their building and won in a shootout. And look, you could question the defense allowing that many points to Notre Dame. That's fair. I think Mike Elko could figure out defense over the course of the year. But now that I know what Marcel Reed can do and get the ball to these explosive wide receivers with running backs that good and an O-line that can do what it can do, I now have a lot of confidence in the Aggies, enough to put them in my top 10. 8, I have Penn State, who dominated Villanova. And look, is there still preseason expectation baked into Penn State? Yes, but you've mostly dominated inferior competition, which is what I could ask from you. You seem to be getting better. And yeah, we're going to find out real soon in a couple weeks when you host Oregon. I cannot wait for that game. 7 is the Oklahoma Sooners. We just broke down their team. We talked about how impressive their win had been against Michigan. That still holds weight, and Michigan looked great this week. So that's still a really solid win. Defense looks to be one of the best in the country. On a short list of teams I would put in that conversation. And we think John Mateer, at least I do, is a really good quarterback. They're at 7. And if they beat Auburn, adding a second really strong win, who knows how high they could climb next week. 6 is Florida State, who drops a little bit here. And it's just because really a team jumped them. Same holds. The Alabama win, still looks strong, maybe even better than before, still beating all the inferior competition. What really happened here is there's one team we'll talk about in a second that just moved up ahead. They come in at 6. 5 is Oregon, who did, 34-14 against Northwestern. It was 34-0. You put in the backups. Northwestern scored a couple of times at the end. But this team, the defense, like I said, it's Oklahoma in the conversation with teams like Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, LSU. Like, those are the 5 I'm looking at right now for best defense in the country. Dante Moore, now the Heisman favorite. I'm so mad I didn't pick him to win the Heisman. I put him second. Instead, I picked him second and Cade Klubnik first, which looks terrible now. I was so close to picking Dante Moore. I'm not saying he's going to win it, but I really wish that would have been my pick instead of Klubnik. It took one game into the season. I was like, I should have gone Dante Moore, and I was so close to doing it. 4, LSU drops a little bit here. They had been first after week 1, second after week 2. Now after week 3, they come in at 4. They are dropping back down, and that is just the offense hasn't looked impressive. Now, Brian Kelly will tell you, you won the game in the SEC, and they can run the ball. They can't run the ball. And Garrett Nussmeier did not play well, and the offense is not good enough to be a national championship team right now, but the defense certainly looks to be. The pass rush is great, could be even better, like if Whit Weeks is allowed to play full games after questionable targeting call. And yeah, you beat Florida, you beat Clemson. Defenses look great. I will say, we don't know if either of those offenses is even in the top half of college football. And the offense, but the same goes in reverse for the offense because Clemson and Florida could both have really strong defenses. We'll continue to find out more about the Tigers. For now, the resume puts them at 4. Eye test-wise, I am questioning them, though. 3, this is a team I talk about jumping up. They questioned Georgia after the Austin Peay performance. Like, passing game doesn't look good enough. I don't believe in Gunnar Stockton. And then what does he do? He proves me completely wrong. Well, I did think they'd win, but I thought it'd be a low-scoring game. Instead, we get 44-41. He leads the drive down 38-30, over the shoulder throw, London Humphreys, beautiful, big play after big play. Proves he's the guy, proves Georgia's got their quarterback and an offense that can win a shootout. And yeah, I trust Kirby Smart to figure out the defense. Bulldogs look not as good as some of the great teams that won national titles, but they look like the cream of the crop in the SEC right now, and once again look to be a true national title contender. And at second, dropping down from number 1, is the Buckeyes. The Texas win, not as impressive as it once was. And I know you were dominant in terms of yardage-wise against Ohio, but it was closer than it should have been. 13-9 with 22 minutes left in the game maybe. So it's just questionable performance from them. And when a team like Miami crushes South Florida, who I still think is a really good team, and has the Notre Dame win, who I think is a really good team, and overall, just eye test-wise, I think looks better than Ohio State. The receivers look great. The O-line looks great. They've got the better wins. There's really no reason except for brand and like Ohio State being national champion and Miami being, Miami and Mario Cristobal being Mario Cristobal. But just watching the team, I don't see how Miami shouldn't be number one right now based off what they've done. And that is why the Miami Hurricanes, as of my week 4 edition of the top 25, are the number one team in the country. That's all I have for today's video. Make sure to let me know who are your guys' top 10 teams and who are your guys' picks for this weekend's games. If you guys enjoyed, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Help us hit 200 subscribers on the channel. Until next time.